我的分享就到这里。
谢谢你 Andy，谢谢你。Let's give Andy a big round of applause and thank him for his time and sharing session. So next for the third and final speaker, we have Billy Lim, who is a Singaporean, and he will be speaking to us about cross-cultural ethics with our Chinese partners. So Billy is a Singaporean who has been in China since 2002. He's in the business of interior design and construction and renovation services. He has provided professional services to MNCs like AIA, Cisco, FedEx, HP, Microsoft, Nokia, and local conglomerates like Alibaba, ByteDance, Huawei, etc. So he will be sharing with us from his perspective the differences of cross-cultural ethics with his Chinese business associates. So Billy is currently the general manager of Huazun Development Engineering Group in South China, focusing mainly on commercial projects. And Billy is also a key member of OSG Youth Alliance, a social enterprise that develops global youth leaders through organizing and participating in social responsibility programs. So let's give a round of applause to Billy. So Billy, over to you.
Hello, hi. First of all, thank you, BNCS, as well as Warren. So everybody can hear me clearly, yeah? All right. So I'm just going to start, very interesting to hear from the first two speakers as well. So my approach will be slightly different since we're talking about really cross-cultural ethics with Chinese partners. But before I start going into the topic itself, let me just Phyllis has actually done a brief introduction of me, but for the benefit of all the audience, okay, I came to China in 2002. The first stop was in Guangzhou. Okay, I came with what is now known as the Raffles Design Institute, but of course back then it was a different name. I came as a lecturer. Okay, so after I completed the first contract teaching interior design in Raffles Design Institute, I actually moved to Beijing and set up a design consultancy firm with a partner, with another Singaporean friend. Okay, won't go into the details. As you can see from here, it didn't really work out in the end, but the Singapore partner and myself, we decided to, it was a shared decision that we should remain as friends rather than business partners. So we split, and I moved to Shanghai in 2004, end of 2004, where I joined RSP Architects, which is also a Singaporean company, right? So we were working with clients like Capital Land, right, retail malls and stuff like that. Okay, so pretty much up to this point in time, I was still surrounded very much by international expats as well as Singaporean community, right? Then in 2005, I had the opportunity to move back to Beijing. And of course, during that time, of course, 2002, we all know SARS broke out in Guangzhou. Yeah. So up to 2005, I have been in Guangzhou, Beijing, and Shanghai, which is like the three first-tier cities of China. So at that point in time, when the opportunity came for me to go back to Beijing, I actually took it because I actually loved Beijing for its distinct four seasons back then. Right, so going back there, I stayed on with this company, AGIA Group, which is actually a Chinese, a local Beijing construction firm, and they did not have any design capabilities, right? They were a contracting firm, contractors, right? So, which is why I joined them as a design director, and from there, I was with them for 10 years. Until I left them for the first time in 2015. So I was with them for 10 years as their design director, and subsequently became a partner with them. Okay, so I've had, so that was the company where my real experience with Chinese partners and staff and all started, right? So fast forward to 2015, I left AGIA Group for the first time and went into this conglomerate, NH Hotel Group. For those who are familiar with the European market, you may have heard of the NH Hotel Group. Okay, it's a Spanish brand, but it was in 2015, it was bought over by HNA, which is the Hainan Airlines Group, bought over by the hospitality group of HNA, right? So they introduced NH into China. So I was headhunted to run NH project and construction development team, right? But I was with them only for about two years plus. In 2018, due to personal reasons, because I became a father, actually in 2016, and decided that Beijing was not the place where I wanted to raise my kids. So was actively looking for a chance to move out of Beijing. So coincidentally, my ex-company, ex-partner was thinking of expanding into South China. So in 2018, I decided to come to Shenzhen with the company. Okay, so fast forward 2020. Actually, I've I've switched a different platform now, right? Due to COVID, so development of uh, the AGIA group in South China wasn't as planned. So I decided that I wanted to leave, and I've managed to find another partner, Fortune, okay, and join them during 2020 in April. Okay, so that's just kind of like a background, right? So I'll talk a little bit more about Fortune later on, right? But so these are just some of the past works or feature that I was in for the Interior Design China magazine, right? So this was actually an article on the Mango fashion stores in China, where we did about 15 units or 15 outlets within a year, and just some articles that I was featured in the early days. So now joining Huachun, like Felice actually introduced just now, we are actually focused on corporate interiors right now. We are very much focused on corporate interiors. I have worked with the local conglomerates like Alibaba to Huawei to Tencent to Mindray and so forth. And of course, in the early days when I was partner with AGIA, some of our key clients included like AIA, right, the insurance company, FedEx, Nokia, Microsoft, Hewlett Packard, Nestle, etc. Okay, so right now I am still in the industry of the interior design and renovation. Okay, for this OSG Youth Alliance that I am a volunteer with, okay, we are focused on developing global or youth for the global market, for the global industry, by focusing on organizing as well as participating in socially responsible events and activities, right? So we encourage youth that are in our membership. We encourage them to participate and to take part in cross borders, cross countries activities and events, whether it's offline or online. Okay, so to expose young people to the different realities of the real world, right? Okay, so having spoken about talking about this real world, I'd like to go into this expectation of, obviously we are talking about China, cross-cultural expectations and cross-cultural ethics with Chinese partners. So there's this expectation. Let me just start off because I'm actually a trained interior designer and architect. So I'll start off with some images of all this environment, right? I think to some extent, many people still kind of, there's still people out there, right, that see China as this, right? And definitely for me in the early days when I came in the early 2000s, there was a part of me that felt this was what China is, okay? And when I first came, part of China was indeed like that, right? But today, in reality, what we have is this, and I'm not sure how many of you have been to China or before the COVID, obviously, right? So would you all be able to recognize this? Would you be able to tell me which city this is? Anyone? You can leave a message if you recognize this. And this. These are mega metropolis, right? They are not just a city by itself. I'm sure everybody recognizes this and this, right? So what we have previously just seen is I see some people responding, Thank you for answering, Olive. Yes, Shanghai was obviously, you recognize that. Let me go back. So this is actually Guangzhou, right? Guangzhou city, right? This is what they call the Xiaoman. And we have, this is Beijing. This is where the World Trade Center is, Guomao. This is the Guomao Shangquan, or what they call the World Trade Center in China, in Beijing. Right? And obviously, this is Shanghai. And this is actually Shenzhen, with this, the tallest building in Shenzhen. I'm not sure if it's in South China, but this is the tallest building in Shenzhen, the Ping An Tower, right? I think it's 138 floors or more. Okay, so what I'm sharing now, next page here, you can see is a page where a map that I have actually done, because I've lived in all the four first tier cities. So out of curiosity myself, right, having lived here since 2002, I actually did a map like this about 5 years ago, a comparison between our dear homeland, Singapore, as compared to the city that I am residing in right now, Shenzhen, which is 2.5 times the size of Singapore. Guangzhou, the first city that I actually came to know China in, they had 10.5 times of Singapore, and Shanghai, 9 times, and of course Beijing, 22 times, so close to 23 times the size of Singapore. Right. So why am I showing this? Because I think a lot of Singaporeans, especially, fail to understand this concept of scale. Right. The concept of scalability is actually quite alien to many people coming to China for the first time, right? So though all these issues will actually become, all this knowledge, actually, I think it becomes an issue when we start working with Chinese partners, because we look at the market differently. We look at how we approach problems differently, right? So I'm just going to throw in a few words here so that everyone can kind of understand what we are looking at. So I think these are some keywords which are very important if you're when you are dealing, not if, when you are dealing with Chinese partners. Whether the partner is literally your business partner, as in both of you are investors, or whether it's actually a project partner where they are your suppliers, or whether they are your customer, right? The first word I want to throw out is expectation. As you can see from the previous images and slides that I've shown, right, expectations and reality are many a times not aligned. I think that's when disappointment and anger will start seeping in, right? So going to the next page here, I think you guys can see, I'm not sure, right? I think one of the issue with non-Chinese, I'm not going to just say Singaporean or Western or anything, but I think,
No. Speaker view.
hello? Yes, right? What speaker view? Am I still on? Yes? Okay. I'm just going to continue, right? So you can see on this table here, right and wrong. I think many non-Chinese, I would, of course, I'm not, it's not affirmative, but majority, I think non-Chinese tend to see things in this way. You have the right way and you have the wrong way. You're the correct, incorrect, moral, immoral, or whether, what is right. When you do not harm another being, you call that's the right thing to do. And when you actually, if your action actually result in harm to other people, that's wrong, right? So we see it in very binary methodology, right? Black and white, right and wrong. But having lived in China for so long, I think the Chinese have a very open mind in understanding that there is actually much more than just right and wrong. There is everything in between, right? There is everything in between this so-called right and wrong. And that nothing is absolutely right all the time and nothing is absolutely wrong all the time, right? Which brings me to the topic of why is that so? I think culturally, China, we all know, well, I would say all know, but we are accustomed to the story of China being told to us actually from a Western point of view. Whether it is Hollywood version or the Western world version, right? I mean, we are very much influenced by the American Hollywood culture, where we all grew up watching Rocky and Rambo. You know, the concept of a single hero that goes against all odds and come out a hero or a winner, right? And all the evil in the world is just being destroyed or being put down by this hero, right? Whereas in China, it's still a very much the whole concept of China is huge, right? The new China was found, right? Was founded upon the people's power, the revolution, the long march, the Changzhen. These are all not because of one single individual, and they never glorify that one particular person. Okay, it was always the strength of the masses, the movement of the people, and so forth. So I think that's actually a very fundamental cultural difference that expats like myself, when we first came to China, that we failed to understand. Okay, so although that's the case, right? Before I go into that, I think culturally we are also very similar, and I think it's very important to find this common ground. Culturally, I think in any culture, any race, any nation, I think everybody has the same wish: the wish for the next generation to be better off than themselves, the wish for their older generation and their elders to actually be able to retire happily, healthily, and peacefully. I think that's a common cultural fundamental wish for anyone. Okay, so once we actually start recognizing that between so-called the Western civil world as well as the Chinese environment, we do have common grounds, right? Which now brings me to this ethics issue, right? There are also different schools of thought about how China is actually, being communist, being socialist, is driven by many things other than capitalism back then. But of course, now China is showing that it has its own ways of dealing with its growth, and it's growing in a different, with a different way as to what most people or most of the Western civilization will understood, okay, or understand. And it's very much something I feel, I need to touch on this topic of ethics as well, right? Because we tend to, as I said, we see the world in binary, right and wrong, and so on, okay? So many a times we come into China and start making judgment about what is right or what is the wrong way of doing things and what is the right way of doing things. But the honest truth is China has its own methodology. And like I said, nothing is forever right and nothing is forever wrong. What is wrong for you could be actually very right for the other person, right? Or from the other point of view, and vice versa, right? So that's something we need to understand. And so which brings me to this. So having understood all those terms, okay, if you're coming to China and you really want to work with the local partners, I think first and foremost, you need to also understand what kind of person you are, right? With these two signage here, I think I'm trying to illustrate something here. There are people who tend to look for cues allowing for certain behavior, as I've written there, risk adverse. So when you see a U-turn sign, you U-turn, right? You say this is allowed. But when you don't see a sign, right, when there is no U-turn sign there, okay, or if it's a junction that has no signs, okay, what I learned in my years here is most Chinese, when I first came, right, when I first came and encountered Chinese, most Chinese drivers would just U-turn when there is no sign stating that they cannot do a U-turn, right? Kind of a bit of a confusing, right? But what I'm saying is, when they see that there isn't any sign there, it means they are allowed to do things. Whereas for, I think, most of the Western culture, we were brought up to say, yep, there are certain regulations, there are certain rules, and the rules are stated out there. So if the rules are not stated, it means you cannot do it. So we tend to look for cues that allow certain behavior. Whereas Chinese, they tend to look for cues that disallow certain behavior. So if it doesn't disallow, it means it's allowed. Okay. Well, we can go into that topic even in detail later if there's any question. Okay, so I'm just going to go on again to the next word that I'm looking into, professionalism, right? Again, this is born out of I think, a Western education, and the whole Western civilization is very much built on this. A lot of the jobs, a lot of the work that we do, we attach this term professionalism to it, and we make ourselves seem like, oh, I'm a professional in this, I'm the specialist in this. So the term professionalism, of course, we expect a certain level of competence or skill, okay, in the person practicing this. So what happens is, when we come in, we take this, say, I'm a professional, I'm coming in, I want to impart certain knowledge to you, right? I think that's actually quite a offensive approach, okay, which does not actually go well in this environment, because what works for you or what works for us outside of China don't usually work in China itself. Okay, you need to tweak it, you need to change it a little. So we need to re-understand or relearn the few terms that I've listed out just now. For us, when we come to China, I realize these few words actually embodies a slightly different meaning in the Chinese context. Okay, which brings me now to talking about leveraging and managing your local resources, right? So when you actually manage your local resources, again, like I said, it's not just a partner as a business partner. We're talking about partners, people you work with, colleagues, people you pay to work, so-called for you, staff, and suppliers, right? All this, how do you actually manage them? And this image here that I've shown, you can see that half the time we are blabbering and people may not actually understand. And this, I think, boils down to communication. So language itself is actually very important to actually understand the Chinese language, to actually use the correct terminology, your vocabulary. You need to build up on that to actually be able to communicate effectively, obviously, right? Working with partners in China, I think it's very important to have a vision, a big picture. Whether this big picture is from you or from your partners, is always very important to actually talk it out. And I think for people coming into China, my advice is always take a secondary approach first, right? Not coming in and being aggressive and saying, I have this idea. I think it's always good to come in and actually understand what the team or your partner or your suppliers actually have in mind. What is their big picture? I think it's easier for us because we are coming into their market, their industry, and we are an individual. It's important for us to come in to understand what their big picture is and find how our big picture can fit into their big picture. Instead of trying to go in and say, this is my big picture, all your pictures, all your vision are wrong, you should follow my vision. Right? I think that's a mistake many people make when they come in because they feel that they are the professionals. They come in here with certain strategies and guidelines, right? So the objective, I think, ultimately, having this talk today is building successful partnership. That's what we want. And I think I saw this image and I think it's very visual, right? Successful partnership, of course, you have everybody smiling. Somebody has a product or a service and somebody else is willing to pay for it. This is actually very simple. So as long as we try to keep our objective simple, I think it's easy to navigate through the whole partnership with a Chinese, right? Once we start understanding what they really want, right? Which I'm coming to an end, so bear with me a little bit more, right? So it comes down to this word, I think, respect. The fundamentals of any relationship is respect, right? And which is why I was talking about all these individual words, whether it's cultural, whether it's ethics, whether it's professionalism. I think fundamentally we need to realize when we come into China, we need to first accord respect to them for what they have done over the last, not just over the last 30 years. The fact that this civilization, this nation has survived 5,000 years throughout history. I think we need to accord them some respect. The fact that they have survived for so long, they must be doing something right. Let's not forget that, right? So, and of course, yes, I think you all can recognize what this is, and what's the best way to get to communicate and to actually gain respect from each other. This is it, on wine and dine, food, and food is something that's very inherent to the Chinese culture, and drinking is very much a part of the eating or the food culture in China, right? So that's something you may need to learn in order to be able to accord the same kind of respect for them to actually accord the same kind of respect back to us, right? With that, I think should not have overrun. So thank you very much for listening, right? So that concludes my topic on working with local Chinese partners. Thank you
Thank you
very
so much,
much.
Billy. Yeah, what